Chapter 1. Assignment to the Unimaginable. The vast, glittering expanse of Zenar Prime stretched out below as the Terran shuttlecraft descended toward the alien capital. Its atmosphere shimmered in hues of gold and lavender, a kaleidoscope of alien bioluminescence and towering spires that stretched toward the heavens. Zenar Prime was not just the seat of the Zenvarian Empire. It was a testament to their unmatched elegance, their mastery of organic technology, and their strange, ritualistic customs that no human had fully understood. Corporal Ethan Wells, a seasoned soldier of Earth's military forces, stood stiffly in his shuttle seat as the craft prepared to dock. His reflection stared back at him from the shuttle window. A man in his early 30s, athletic but unassuming, dressed in a formal Terran diplomatic uniform that felt awkward on his frame. Ethan had never pictured himself in such a role. His job, up until yesterday, had been straightforward: follow orders, defend Earth's interests, and never question the chain of command. But now, all of that had changed. An unexpected assignment. The orders had arrived without warning. Ethan had been summoned by Ambassador Greaves, the chief Terran envoy to the Zenvarian Empire. Greaves was a gruff, no-nonsense man whose patience for military personnel was notoriously thin. "You're being reassigned, Corporal," Greaves had said, sliding a data pad across his desk, effective immediately. Ethan had frowned, scrolling through the orders. Personal liaison to Queen Velithra? "Sir, with all due respect, I'm not trained for this. I'm a soldier, not a diplomat." "Precisely why you're perfect for the job," Greaves had replied, leaning back in his chair. "The Zenvarians respect strength and loyalty, not silver tongues. And frankly, most of my staff would faint at the idea of spending more than 5 minutes alone with the Queen." Ethan had tried to protest, but Greaves cut him off with a stern glare. "This isn't up for debate. The Queen personally requested a human liaison, and you've been chosen. Your mission is to maintain good relations, represent Earth's interests, and most importantly—" Greaves hesitated, then sighed. "Just don't offend her." Ethan had left the meeting with a sinking feeling in his stomach. The Zenvarians were notoriously enigmatic, their customs and traditions shrouded in mystery. And Queen Velithra, in particular, was said to be as unpredictable as she was powerful. Arrival at the palace. As the shuttle docked at the Zenvarian capital's central spire, Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. A Zenvarian escort awaited him at the landing platform, 2 towering guards clad in gleaming, chitinous armor that shimmered with iridescent hues. Their insect-like eyes regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Follow," one of them said, his voice a deep, resonant hum that seemed to echo in Ethan's chest. Ethan obeyed, his boots clicking against the polished floor as they led him into the palace. The interior was a marvel of organic architecture, its walls and ceilings pulsating faintly with a bioluminescent glow. Strange, vine-like structures twisted and curled along the corridors, their surfaces glistening with alien energy. They finally arrived at an ornate chamber, its entrance guarded by a massive, translucent door that seemed to ripple like liquid. One of the guards gestured for Ethan to enter, then stepped aside. "Queen Velithra awaits," the guard said. Ethan swallowed hard, his palms slick with sweat. He stepped through the shimmering doorway, the air inside cool and fragrant with a scent he couldn't place. The Queen. The chamber was vast and open, its walls lined with flowing, silk-like drapes that shimmered in the light. At its center stood Queen Velithra, her presence commanding and otherworldly. She was tall and regal, her form both humanoid and distinctly alien. Her skin was a deep, metallic bronze that seemed to shift with every movement, and her long, flowing hair shimmered like strands of liquid silver. Her eyes, luminous and piercing, glowed with an inner light that seemed to see through Ethan's very soul. "You are the human they've sent," she said, her voice melodic yet firm. It wasn't a question. Ethan straightened, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "Corporal Ethan Wells, at your service, Your Majesty." Velithra tilted her head, a faint smile playing at her lips. "A soldier, not a diplomat. Interesting." Ethan didn't know how to respond, so he remained silent, hoping his neutral expression wouldn't betray his nerves. Velithra stepped closer, her movements fluid and graceful. "Your people intrigue me, Corporal. So fragile, yet so resilient. Tell me, are you as loyal as your reputation suggests? I am, Your Majesty, Ethan replied. My loyalty is to Earth and its allies. The Queen's smile widened, though her expression remained unreadable. We shall see. An unusual request. The first few days of Ethan's assignment were filled with mundane tasks, relaying messages, attending ceremonial events, and learning the intricate protocols of the Zenvarian court. The Queen's demands were few but specific, and Ethan quickly realized she was testing him, gauging his patience, his adaptability, and perhaps even his loyalty. Then came the request that left him frozen in place. Ethan had been summoned to the Queen's private quarters, a rare honor that few humans had ever experienced. The room was opulent, its walls lined with flowing streams of liquid light that cast a warm, golden glow. Velithra sat on a raised platform, her long, flowing robes pooling around her like liquid silk. I require your assistance, she said, her tone casual yet commanding. Of course, Your Majesty, Ethan replied, his heart pounding. Velithra turned her back to him, revealing her long, elegant spine. Scrub my back? Ethan blinked, certain he had misheard. Your Majesty? Velithra glanced over her shoulder, her expression serene. Is that a problem, Corporal? Ethan's mind raced. Was this a test? A trap? Zenvarian customs were notoriously complex, and any perceived slight could have dire consequences. Yet, the Queen's tone was calm, as though she were asking for nothing more than a glass of water. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped forward. No problem at all, Your Majesty. A moment of vulnerability. Ethan hesitated. They're impressive. Your technology, your culture, it's unlike anything we've encountered. Velithra chuckled, the sound low and musical. And yet, you fear us. Ethan didn't deny it. Fear isn't always a bad thing, Your Majesty. It keeps us cautious. It keeps us alive. Velithra turned slightly, her glowing eyes meeting his. Wise words. But fear can also blind you, Corporal. It can keep you from seeing the truth. Ethan didn't know how to respond, so he focused on his task, his mind racing with questions. What truth was she referring to? And why had she chosen him for this strange, intimate moment? The turning point. As the session ended, Velithra rose gracefully, her expression thoughtful. You've done well, Corporal. Perhaps there is hope for your people yet. Ethan bowed, his mind still reeling. Thank you, Your Majesty. As he left her quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. This wasn't just about diplomacy or duty. The Queen had seen something in him, something he wasn't sure he understood himself. But one thing was clear. His assignment was far from over. Chapter 2. The Queen's Motive. A growing tension. The days following Corporal Ethan Wells' unusual encounter with Queen Velithra were nothing short of bewildering. Though Ethan tried to push the incident from his mind, it lingered like an unanswered question. The Queen's request had been bizarrely personal, yet her demeanor had remained regal and detached. More troubling was the way she had looked at him, like she was testing him, gauging his reactions. Ethan's duties continued as usual, though the Zenvarian court felt increasingly alien to him. The palace's corridors were a labyrinth of living walls that pulsed faintly with light, their organic surfaces shifting in subtle, rhythmic patterns. It was a place of constant motion and hidden whispers, where nothing felt solid or predictable. Despite his initial unease, Ethan found himself drawn into the Queen's world. Her demands became more frequent, pulling him into her orbit for tasks that ranged from the mundane relaying messages between diplomats to the perplexingly intimate. One afternoon, she requested his presence during a meditation ceremony. Another evening, she asked him to accompany her to the palace gardens, where she spoke of Zenvarian history and philosophy in cryptic, poetic phrases. You're different from the others, she remarked during one of these walks. You listen. I'm here to serve, Your Majesty, Ethan replied cautiously. Serving and listening are not the same, Velithra said, her luminous eyes studying him. Few in my court understand that. A whispered warning. Ethan wasn't blind to the tension building around him. The Zenvarian court was a den of intrigue, its politics layered and ruthless. Though the Queen ruled with absolute authority, factions within the empire constantly vied for power. Her growing interest in a human soldier was not going unnoticed. One evening, as Ethan prepared to retire to his chambers, he was approached by Virek, a high-ranking Zenvarian noble with a reputation for cunning. Virek's iridescent exoskeleton shimmered in the dim light, his multifaceted eyes reflecting a faintly amused expression. "A word of advice, human," Virek said, his voice smooth and measured. "The Queen's favor is a dangerous thing. It draws both envy and suspicion." Ethan frowned. "I'm just doing my job." Virek chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. "Perhaps, but others may see your presence as something more. Be careful, Corporal. The Queen's attention is not without consequence." Before Ethan could respond, Virek disappeared into the shadows, leaving him alone in the corridor. The first revelation. Ethan's unease grew as he tried to piece together the Queen's motives. What did she want from him? And why had she chosen him, a low-ranking soldier, for such a personal role? The answer came unexpectedly during a late-night meeting in the palace library. The room was a sprawling maze of organic shelves filled with glowing, crystalline data cores. Velithra sat at a central table, her elegant form bathed in soft light, as she reviewed a holographic projection of star charts. "You're restless, Corporal," she said without looking up. "Speak your mind." Ethan hesitated, then decided he had nothing to lose. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, I don't understand why I'm here." "Why me?" Velithra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Honesty. I value that." She gestured for him to sit, her expression softening. "You're here because you're unburdened by the complexities of diplomacy. You see things clearly, without the weight of bias or pretense. That is rare." Ethan frowned. "I'm just a soldier." "And yet you've proven yourself capable of more," Velithra said. "Tell me, Corporal, what do you know of the Zenvarian Unity trials?" Ethan shook his head. "Not much. The Federation files were vague. Some kind of ritual?" Velithra nodded. "The trials are an ancient tradition, a test of loyalty and strength that determines an individual's worthiness to serve the throne. In 3 days, the Unity trials will begin and I have chosen you as my champion." Ethan stared at her, stunned. "Your champion? But I'm not Zenvarian." "Precisely," Velithra said. "A human champion will send a message to the Empire, that the alliance between our people is more than words." Ethan's mind raced. The Unity trials were infamous for their brutality, a gauntlet designed to push participants to their limits. Few survived. And yet, Velithra's expression was calm, as if she had no doubt in his ability to succeed. "Why me?" he asked again, his voice barely above a whisper. Velithra leaned closer, her luminous eyes locking onto his. "Because you have something the others lack. You have heart." Training for the trials. The days leading up to the trials were grueling. Velithra assigned Ethan a team of Zenvarian trainers, their methods as alien as their technology. He was pushed to his physical and mental limits, forced to adapt to combat scenarios that defied human logic. The Zenvarian weapons were unlike anything he had used before, organic, living constructs that responded to his movements as if they were extensions of his body. He trained relentlessly, his muscles aching and his mind reeling from the complexity of the challenges. Through it all, Velithra remained a constant presence. She observed his progress, offering guidance and encouragement when he faltered. "You're stronger than you realize," she told him one evening as he struggled to master a Zenvarian energy blade. "Trust yourself." Ethan wasn't sure if he believed her, but her confidence in him was oddly reassuring. The trials begin. The Unity trials were held in the Arena of Lumina, a vast, open structure carved into the cliffs overlooking Zenvar Prime's golden seas. The audience was a sea of Zenvarian nobles, their iridescent forms shimmering in the sunlight. At the center of the arena stood Velithra, her regal presence commanding respect and awe. Ethan entered the arena, his heart pounding as the first challenge was announced. The trials consisted of 3 stages: strength, cunning, and loyalty. Each was designed to test not just physical prowess but also resolve and ingenuity. The first stage was a battle against a Velvrax, a towering, 6-limbed beast with razor-sharp claws and a chitinous exoskeleton. Armed with nothing but a Zenvarian energy blade, Ethan faced the creature head-on, his training and instincts guiding him through the brutal fight. When he finally delivered the killing blow, The arena erupted in cheers. The second stage tested his intelligence. He was placed in a labyrinth filled with shifting walls and deadly traps, forced to solve intricate puzzles while evading automated sentinels. It was a harrowing experience, but Ethan's quick thinking and adaptability saw him through. By the time the final stage arrived, Ethan was battered and exhausted, but his determination hadn't wavered. The final test. The third and final stage was the most difficult. Ethan was presented with a moral dilemma. He could either save a Zenvarian noble one of Velithra's most vocal opponents, secure his own survival by leaving them to die. Ethan hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. In the end, he chose to save the noble, risking his own life in the process. The act earned him the respect of the crowd. More importantly, Velithra's approval. When the trials concluded, Velithra approached him in the center of the arena, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she simply looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with something Ethan couldn't quite place. "You've proven yourself, Corporal," she said, her voice soft. "Not just to me, but to my people." Ethan bowed, his exhaustion forgotten. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Velithra smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You are more than just a soldier, Ethan. You are a symbol of what we can achieve together." As the crowd cheered, Ethan realized that his journey with Velithra was only just beginning. An unsettling revelation. After leaving Queen Velithra's quarters, Corporal Ethan Wells walked the long, dim corridors of the Zenvarian palace, his mind in turmoil. The Queen's request had been unconventional to say the least, but it was her cryptic words that lingered. "Fear can blind you to the truth." What truth? Ethan's instincts told him that this was no idle conversation. The Queen's enigmatic demeanor, her deliberate choice of words, all pointed to something deeper. As he approached his quarters, a soft chime sounded on his comm device. It was a priority message from Ambassador Greaves. Velithra's second request. The next morning, Ethan was summoned to the Queen's throne room. The vast chamber was as grand as it was intimidating, its walls shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to pulse in time with an unseen heartbeat. Velithra sat on her throne, her regal presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "Corporal Wells," she said as he approached. Her tone was calm, almost casual, but her eyes were sharp. "I have another task for you." Ethan bowed slightly, keeping his expression neutral. "Of course, Your Majesty. What do you need?" Velithra gestured toward a small, intricately carved box on a pedestal beside her. "There is a relic stored in the lower vaults of this palace. I require you to retrieve it." Ethan frowned. "Isn't that something your guards could handle?" The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "It is not a matter of capability, Corporal. It is a matter of trust. I wish to see if you are willing to serve, even when the task is not glamorous." Ethan nodded, though her answer only deepened his unease. "I'll retrieve it immediately." The vaults. The lower vaults of the Zenvarian palace were a labyrinth of tunnels carved from living crystal, their surfaces shimmering with a faint, otherworldly glow. Ethan's escort, a stern Zenvarian guard named Trexen, led him through the maze-like corridors in silence. When they reached the vault, Trexen keyed in a complex sequence on the control panel. The door slid open with a low hum, revealing a small chamber filled with artifacts of Zenvarian design. At the center of the room sat a single object, a sphere of translucent material that seemed to contain swirling tendrils of light. "That's the relic?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. Trexen nodded. "Be careful, human. This is not something to be handled lightly." Ethan approached the pedestal and carefully picked up the sphere. It was cool to the touch, its surface smooth and unnervingly warm. As he held it, a faint vibration pulsed through his hand, as if the relic were alive. "What does it do?" Ethan asked, glancing at Trexen. The guard's expression darkened. "That is for the Queen to explain." The hidden message. When Ethan returned the relic to Velithra, her reaction surprised. Whispers in the court. The next day, Corporal Ethan Wells found himself the subject of quiet murmurs among the Zenvarian court. Though their chitinous guards and crystalline advisors were as poised as ever, their sidelong glances betrayed curiosity and perhaps jealousy. To be summoned by Queen Velithra was rare. To be entrusted with such an intimate task was unheard of. As Ethan moved through the gilded corridors of the palace, the enormity of his situation began to weigh on him. What had he done to earn her attention? Was she testing him or preparing him for something far greater? His thoughts were interrupted by Valos, the Queen's senior advisor, who appeared from a side corridor, his flowing robes rustling softly. Valos was tall and imposing, his silver-scaled skin shimmering faintly in the light. "Corporal Wells," Valos said, his tone cool and measured. "Her Majesty has summoned you again." Ethan blinked, surprised. "Now?" Valos nodded. "You are to attend her in the Chamber of Oracles. She wishes for your presence during a matter of significance." The Chamber of Oracles. Ethan had heard whispers of it, an ancient, sacred place where the Zenvarian rulers communed with the mysterious forces that guided their people. The thought of being invited into such a space made his stomach twist with equal parts apprehension and intrigue. "I'll be there," Ethan said, straightening his posture. The Chamber of Oracles. The Chamber of Oracles was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The walls seemed to breathe, their translucent surfaces rippling with streams of liquid light. At the center of the room stood a massive, crystalline structure that pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow. Surrounding it were ornate platforms where the Queen and her advisors stood, their figures bathed in the ethereal light. Queen Velithra stood at the heart of the chamber, her presence commanding. She turned as Ethan entered, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "You came quickly," she observed, a faint smile playing at her lips. "I was told it was important," Ethan replied, stepping onto the lower platform. Velithra gestured for him to join her. "Indeed. Today, we seek guidance from the oracles. Their wisdom will determine the course of our empire and our alliance with your people." Ethan hesitated. "And what do you need from me?" Velithra's smile widened. "Your presence. The oracles must sense your intent, your truth. Only then can they offer clarity." Ethan's pulse quickened as he stepped closer to the crystalline structure. The air around it was thick with energy, a subtle hum resonating through his body. He placed his hand on the crystal as instructed, its surface cool and smooth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a surge of light engulfed the chamber, and Ethan felt his mind pulled into a whirlwind of visions. Visions of the past and future. The visions came in fragments, disjointed yet vivid. He saw the Zenvarian Empire in its prime, its people thriving in harmony with their organic technology. He saw wars, devastating conflicts that tore across the galaxy, leaving entire civilizations in ruins. And he saw Earth, its cities gleaming yet fragile, its leaders negotiating with unseen forces. But the final vision was the most haunting. Ethan stood on a battlefield, surrounded by flames and chaos. At his side was Queen Velithra, her eyes burning with determination. Together, they faced an unseen enemy, a force so vast and malevolent it defied comprehension. As the vision faded, Ethan staggered back, his breathing ragged. Velithra steadied him, her touch firm but gentle. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. What was that?" "The future," Velithra said, her expression somber. "Or one possible version of it. The oracles have shown us what may come if we fail to act." The hidden threat. In the days that followed, Velithra revealed the full extent of the threat facing their worlds. The Zenvarians had detected the emergence of an ancient force known as the Velith, a race of entities that thrived on consuming entire civilizations. According to the oracles, the Velith had been dormant for millennia, but now they were stirring, and Earth and Zenvara were their next targets. "Our alliance must be more than symbolic," Velithra said during one of their private meetings. "It must be forged in blood and fire. Together, we can stand against the Velith. Alone, we will fall." Ethan felt the weight of her words, but he also felt the enormity of the task before them. Convincing Earth's leaders to trust the Zenvarians, let alone fight alongside them, would be no easy feat. Centuries of mistrust and propaganda had left deep scars. "I'll do what I can," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But Earth's leaders won't just take my word for it. They'll need proof." Velithra nodded, her expression resolute. "Then we must give them proof, and you will help me find it." A growing bond. As Ethan and Velithra worked together, a bond began to form between them, one born of shared purpose and mutual respect. Despite their differences, they found common ground in their commitment to protecting their people. Ethan was struck by Velithra's depth, her intelligence, her wit, and her unwavering determination. Beneath her regal exterior was a leader who bore the weight of her empire's survival, yet never wavered in her resolve. Velithra, in turn, saw in Ethan a courage and loyalty that transcended his role as a soldier. He was unafraid to challenge her when necessary, and his humanity brought a perspective she found both refreshing and invaluable. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the Zenvarian capital, Velithra turned to him, her glowing eyes soft. "You are unlike any human I have known, Ethan Wells." Ethan smiled faintly. "I could say the same about you, Your Majesty." Velithra's lips curved into a rare smile. "Velithra will suffice." A dangerous mission. Their next step was to locate a hidden Zenvarian archive, said to contain ancient records of the Velithra's last awakening. The archive was located on a remote moon shrouded in hazardous storms, its access restricted to the Queen and her most trusted advisors. Ethan volunteered to accompany Velithra on the mission, despite the risks. The journey to the moon was fraught with danger, their ship buffeted by violent storms and pursued by mercenaries who sought to sabotage their efforts. But the greatest challenge awaited them inside the archive itself. The records were protected by a series of intricate, deadly traps designed to deter intruders. Ethan and Velithra worked together to navigate the challenges, their partnership tested to its limits. When they finally reached the central chamber, they found the records, but also a grim revelation. The Velith were already mobilizing, their forces amassing on the outskirts of Zenvarian space. A call to action. With the records in hand, Velithra and Ethan returned to Zenvara, their mission a success but their timeline shortened. The Velith were closer than they had feared, and their window to prepare was rapidly closing. Velithra summoned the Zenvarian Council, presenting the evidence and rallying her people to action. Ethan, meanwhile, prepared to return to Earth, determined to convince his leaders of the gravity of the situation. As they stood in the palace's grand hall, Velithra placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "You are our bridge to your people, Ethan. Without you, we cannot succeed." Ethan met her gaze, his resolve unshaken. "I won't let you down." Chapter 3. Secrets Unveiled. The tension mounts. The weeks following the peculiar back-scrubbing incident were a whirlwind of duty, cryptic conversations, and rising tensions between the Terran delegation and the Zenvarian Empire. Corporal Ethan Wells found himself caught in a web of intrigue he could barely comprehend. Every interaction with Queen Velithra seemed laced with hidden meaning, her words veiled in riddles that left him questioning her motives. The Queen's requests grew stranger by the day. At one point, she had Ethan accompany her to the Chamber of Memories, a sacred Zenvarian hall where streams of light formed living tapestries that depicted the Empire's history. There, she had asked him to recount stories of Earth's wars, victories, and sacrifices. "I find your kind fascinating," Velithra had said, her luminous eyes scanning him. So fragile, yet so determined to carve meaning from chaos. Ethan had shared what he could, but the unease gnawed at him. The Queen wasn't just curious, she was searching for something. But what? The prophecy. It was during one of these enigmatic conversations that Velithra revealed a piece of information that changed everything. "Do you know why I requested a human liaison?" she asked one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing Zenvarian capital. "I assumed it was for diplomacy," Ethan replied cautiously. Velithra chuckled, a melodic sound that sent a chill down his spine. "Diplomacy is a convenience, not a purpose." "No, I chose you because of a prophecy." Ethan frowned. "A prophecy?" Velithra turned to face him, her gaze piercing. "Long ago, my people were warned of a reckoning. A time when the Zenvarian Empire would falter, and its survival would hinge on an alliance with a species of untamed resilience. The one who would secure this alliance was described as different, a being with strength forged in conflict, yet capable of compassion beyond reason. Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. "And you think that's me?" Velithra stepped closer, her presence both commanding and disarming. "I think it could be. You see, Corporal, you've already begun to fulfill your role. The question is whether you have the will to see it through." The betrayal. Ethan's world was thrown into chaos the following day when a coded message from Ambassador Greaves summoned him to the Terran embassy. When he arrived, Greaves was waiting, his expression grim. "We have a problem," Greaves said, sliding a data pad across the table. "Intercepted communications from Zenvarian officials. They're planning something, Wells. Something big." Ethan scanned the data, his stomach sinking. The messages hinted at a covert Zenvarian military operation targeting Terran assets, a clear violation of the treaty. "This has to be a misunderstanding," Ethan said, though he didn't fully believe it. The Queen wouldn't risk open conflict. Greaves leaned back, his gaze hard. "You've been spending a lot of time with her. Tell me, Corporal, has she given you any reason to trust her?" Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. Velithra's cryptic behavior, her talk of prophecies, all felt calculated, but he couldn't shake the sense that there was more to her actions than manipulation. "I don't think she's behind this," he said finally, "but I'll find out." Greaves nodded. "Do that. And remember, Wells, your loyalty is to Earth." The confrontation. That night, Ethan confronted Velithra in her private chambers. The Queen, as always, was calm and composed, though there was a flicker of surprise in her luminous eyes as he stormed in. "You've been keeping secrets," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. "About this prophecy. About your plans." Velithra regarded him for a long moment before speaking. "I see the Terran ambassador has poisoned your mind with doubt." "Don't deflect," Ethan snapped. "I need the truth. Are you planning an attack on Terran forces?" Her expression hardened. "I would never jeopardize the alliance we've built. But not all within my court share my vision. There are those who see your kind as a threat." Ethan's heart sank. "Then it's true. Someone in your empire is plotting against us." Velithra stepped closer, her tone urgent. "Yes, but not for the reasons you think. There is a faction within my council that believes the prophecy foretells the destruction of the Zenvarian Empire at the hands of humanity. They seek to preempt this by striking first." Ethan stared at her, disbelief warring with anger. "And you didn't think to tell me this sooner?" "I hoped to stop them quietly," Velithra admitted. "But their plans have advanced faster than I anticipated." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. "You've put me in an impossible position, Your Majesty. My people are preparing for war." "Then help me stop it," Velithra said, her voice fierce. "Together, we can expose the traitors and prevent this from escalating." A dangerous alliance. Despite his doubts, Ethan agreed to help. Velithra provided him with names and locations, detailing the traitors' plans to stage a false flag operation that would frame the Terrans for an attack on a Zenvarian colony. If successful, it would ignite a war neither side could afford. The mission was risky. Ethan and Velithra, accompanied by a small group of loyal Zenvarian guards, infiltrated a remote council outpost where the conspirators were meeting. The facility was heavily guarded, its corridors patrolled by soldiers loyal to the faction. Ethan's military training proved invaluable as they navigated the outpost. He coordinated their movements, neutralizing guards with precision, while Velithra used her influence to manipulate security systems. The tension was palpable, every step fraught with danger. When they finally reached the council chamber, the conspirators were caught off guard. Velithra confronted them, her presence commanding as she laid bare their treachery. "You would doom our empire to satisfy your paranoia," she said, her voice cold. "But your schemes end here." The conspirators resisted, but Ethan's team quickly subdued them. As the dust settled, Velithra turned to him, her gaze filled with gratitude. "You've saved more than just my life, Corporal," she said. "You've saved the future of our people." The aftermath. The traitors' plot was exposed, their plans dismantled before they could spark a war. Velithra wasted no time in consolidating her power, ensuring that those loyal to the conspiracy were removed from positions of influence. Ethan returned to the Terran embassy, where Greaves met him with a rare expression of approval. "You've done good work, Wells," Greaves said. "The Queen spoke highly of your actions." Ethan nodded, though his thoughts remained with Velithra. Their alliance had been forged in crisis, but it had revealed a deeper connection he hadn't expected. A final revelation. On his last night in Zenvar Prime, Velithra summoned Ethan to her chambers one final time. She stood on the balcony, her gaze fixed on the stars. "You've fulfilled the prophecy, Corporal," she said without turning. "Not as a warrior, but as a bridge between our worlds." Ethan joined her, the weight of their journey heavy on his shoulders. "What happens now?" Velithra turned to him, her luminous eyes soft. "Now, we build a future where our peoples can stand as equals. And perhaps we meet again." Ethan smiled, a flicker of hope lighting his expression. "I'd like that." As he departed Zenar Prime, Ethan couldn't help but feel that his story with Velithra was far from over. Their bond had defied borders, species, and expectations. And in a galaxy fraught with division, it was a reminder of what could be achieved when trust and courage prevailed.